The shard did not rip free. It let go, the way a hand releases something it has held too long, fingers uncurling one by one into the cold air. Arya Voss exhaled. The sound was almost content. There. That is the shape of it. I always wondered what it looked like from the outside. The fractal disk at Mira's sternum erupted in black gold light that bent inward rather than out, and Arya's feet went cold first, the way stone does when the fire beneath it finally dies. The shards did not wait. From Mira's sternum, her shoulder blade, from the fused token in Kale's palm, each lit once, brilliant and brief, and then departed. They moved toward Karath the way iron moves toward a lodestone, without apology. Okay, so hear me out. Did he just take them back? Resonant, overlapping itself, enormous and quiet. I was broken into what you could carry. I am gathering. I will have been whole. It is the same moment. All of it. The same moment. Tell the boy, the one with music in his hand, that the hymn does not end here. He knows the last note. He has always known it. Rom? Yeah. I can hear it. I've heard it since Velsaroth. I just didn't know what it was opening toward. The cadence of someone finally setting down a very heavy thing. I have been waiting a very long time to put it down. Thank you for coming. For the first time in 2 centuries, Karath had edges. He filled the sanctum the way thunder fills a valley, not loudly but completely, leaving no space for anything else. Resonant, clarifying like a chord resolving, the echo is finally in unison with itself. I was. I am. I will have been. Remembered. The map's last fragment, below the sanctum of erased names, beneath the Pantheon's own foundation stone, the truth they buried with me, waits. Hoarse, awed to self. How delightfully catastrophic. You're going to make us go under the Pantheon itself, aren't you? The court has already decided. Lay down the sword, apostate, or I will have him take it from you. He knows which grip you favor. Clipped, a confession, and a threatening measure. By what remains of my oath. Davin, look at me. You do not have to be standing where you are standing. Davin looked up exactly once. The brand at his jaw caught the pale light. His mouth opened and closed with the shape of an answer. And then Lysara stepped forward, and the doors were no longer the problem. For the first time in 2 centuries, Karath was not a voice in the dark or a seizure behind someone else's eyes. He was present, he was whole, and the sanctum's nullstone walls held him like a hand cupping fire. Awe, grief. I was, I am, I will have been. The shards remember what I could not hold, and I remember what they were torn from. 4 voices, 1 name. I can hear the map entire. Barely audible. Okay, so hear me out. That is the most beautiful and horrible thing I have ever seen in my entire short life. Lysara did not rush. She never rushed. She walked through the shattered doors as though the sanctum were already a courthouse and the verdict already filed. The court has already decided. 4 shards gathered is not completion. It is evidence. Everything in this room will be unmade. The godbreakers, the memory they carried. Recognition, devastation, Davin. They branded it into me, Aldrich. The brand obeys even when I don't. I stood at your court-martial and I said nothing, and they took that silence as compliance, and then... I know. I knew then. By what remains of my oath, not the court's oath, not Lysara's oath, mine. I do not raise my sword against you, Davin. I never did. It was not forgiveness exactly. It was something older. The moment a man decides what his oath actually means, stripped of the institution that once held it. Davin's sword hit the sanctum floor with a sound like a final argument ending. Wardenbound. You are in violation of... Lysara moved the way judgment moves, without hesitation, without waste. The erasure lance was not aimed at the trio. It was aimed at Karath's manifested core, the point where all 4 shards converged. Controlled pain, deliberate, sardonic even now. How delightfully catastrophic that she thinks that will work. The lance hit the cracked shard bond at Mira's sternum. For 1 terrible second, the fracture widened, and then the shard answered, pulling the break shut from within, soldering it gold. The cold white flame didn't erase it. It completed it. enormous, overlapping itself, not angry, grieved. She remembers nothing she chose to forget. That is the court's gift to its servants. I was erased. She was merely emptied. There is a difference. He did not strike her. He did not erase her or unmake her or do any of the things the court had trained her to fear from a restored God. He simply walked toward her and remembered her fully from before she had been made into what she was. I was, I am, I will have been, and you were a child who asked me once what gods were afraid of. I told you the truth. The court took that memory from you and gave you a purpose in its place. Here it is, returned. Flat ceremony cracking at its seams, the first unsteady word she has spoken. The court has hushed, honest. She's remembering something they took. Okay, I think I understand now what the map is actually for. The name Karath spoke did not echo. It pressed itself into the null stone like a brand, black gold letters blooming across the pale walls in a script no living hand had written in 200 years. Oren, the unwritten, first tier of the undying court. He did not erase me because I remembered too much. He erased me because I remembered him and what he did before the court existed to sanction it. The letters spread floor to ceiling. Mira pressed one hand flat against her sternum where the sealed gold shard scar pulsed once, and something entered her blood like a key turning in a lock she hadn't known she carried. Anguished, barely above a whisper. The kill sanction didn't come from the council. Lysara bypassed them entirely. She received it directly, a single source authority, first tier. Oren, I was in the room when the seal arrived. I didn't know his name then. I do now. You carried that for 3 years and said nothing at the court-martial. You watched them scrape the crest off my armor, and you said nothing. They had already branded me before the trial ended. I was speaking through someone else's silence. I'm sorry, Aldrich. That is insufficient, I know. Knowledge did not arrive as words. It arrived as certainty, the specific, irreversible kind that changes the shape of every memory before it. Mira understood what Karath had remembered. She understood why Oren could not allow that memory to exist. Stunned, sardonic mask entirely absent. He founded the court on a lie, not a small one, the kind that requires a god's erasure to keep standing. Karath didn't just remember what happened, he was there. He is the only witness. Okay, so hear me out. We just became the only people alive who know the Undying Court was built on a murder. That's the story. That is absolutely the worst and best story I have ever been inside. Overlapping resonance I cannot hold. The walls are not enough. The truth is too large for this vessel. Remember what I named. Remember it precisely. Memory is the only weapon Oren cannot sanction away. I was, I am, I will have been. Carry it, all 3 of you. The map is complete. You will know where it ends. The 4 shards returned to flesh and bone, the god's form dissolving back into echo before the last shard light had settled. The sanctum's nave stood cracked and blazing with mourning, and the silence that followed was the loudest thing any of them had ever heard. 3 signal flares. Not one. Lysara was not calling reinforcements. She was bracketing them, triangulating a perimeter. She had not retreated. She had repositioned. By what remains of my oath, we do not stop. West, past the Wayshrine Ridge. Davin, stay close or stay behind. Your choice must be made in the next 10 steps. There's something you need to know. The brand on my collarbone, it's not only a binding. I think it's a seal, a listening seal. I think she's been hearing everything since the doors fell. The signal fires came from both ridges simultaneously, north and south, which meant the valley was already a throat, and they were already inside it. Okay, so hear me out. Running directly toward the thing that lit those fires is not the plan I'd have chosen, and yet here we are, doing exactly that. The southern route is gone. Keep moving. Low, extract your word. Oren broadcast the name, not to suppress it, to use it. Anyone who heard Karath speak it aloud carries a resonance now. The wardens track it like a bell tone. So the god names his enemy, and Oren turns that name into a homing beacon aimed at everyone in the room. How delightfully catastrophic. Every unit across the continent received the resonance tag before dawn. I don't know how many that is now. The resonance found the shards like a key finding the wrong lock, not opening them, just rattling them. Mira's gold seal pulsed once, twice, and the hairline cracks Lysara's lance had sealed began to retrace themselves like ink remembering a page. My palm is warm. That's okay, so hear me out. That's not good, right? That's not a coincidence? Not looking away from her own sternum. We are both walking signal fires, and we are standing in a fog bank on an open road. So no, not a coincidence. Then we stop standing and start moving. By what remains of my oath, we find shelter or we find a way to silence the light. Voice only, resonating from the air beside Mira, not through her. Below the way shrine, null iron relay. I was, I am, I will have been, and I built that instrument before the Pantheon wrote my absence. It can carry the truth I spoke to every mortal mind at once. You spoke without using me. How long have you been able to do that? The echo halves itself, since Area let go. The cost of her permission was the last wall between my voice and the open air. The vault was exactly where Karath said it would be. The relay was exactly as he described it. And it was already lit, already humming with a frequency that vibrated in Mira's sternum scar and Seal's fused palm like a tuning fork struck by someone else's hand. Voice dropping to a near whisper, Joke attempted an abandoned midword. Okay, so who in every erased god's name lit a null iron relay in a secret vault before we got here? The figure crouching over the relay turned slowly. She wore white pilgrim's robes, and her face was the face of Saint Area Voss. Eyes open, serene, and she had been dead for less than an hour. The relay was not dark. It breathed amber light in slow pulses, patient, certain, as if it had been waiting for exactly this many footsteps to arrive. Don't draw anything. Relay's already warm. You pull steel in here, the null iron reads it as hostile and locks. Depends on what you're paying for an explanation, but I'll give the short one free. Somebody told me to guard this, and that somebody left a note with your names on it. Dry Pell, of all the abandoned shrines in the western reaches, how delightfully catastrophic. The seal was Karath's, the same fractal geometry pressed into Mira's sternum. The ink inside was centuries old and still wet, as if it had been written this morning and every morning before it simultaneously. Brief voice coming from Mira's shard rather than her throat. I was already planning this. I will have written it before I was erased. The relay is mine. It was always going to be yours to use. I was. I am. I will have been. Okay, so hear me out. A god pre-planned a contingency, hid it in a pilgrim road, paid a march as scavenger, and wrote us a letter centuries before we were born. That's either brilliant or the most unsettling thing I've ever heard, and I lived in a sewer for 2 years. Read the rest of it, Mira. All of it. When Mira's palm met the null iron, the relay did not hum. It sang, low and vast and absolutely certain, as though it had been holding its breath for 200 years and had finally been permitted to exhale. Thunderous, overlapping itself, the relay amplifying his voice into every null iron node across the continent. Orin the Unwritten ordered my erasure because I remembered the treaty he burned, the compact between the first gods and the first mortals, that no deity shall unmake what memory has ratified. I was, I am, I will have been, and now every mind that touches null iron will have been told. Breathless, strained against the relay's pull. It's going, I can feel it moving outward. Every node, every vault, every way shrine, every border post with null iron in its walls. 3 judgment rune helms struck the pilgrim road in the space of 4 seconds. Not dropped in battle, removed. The wardens stood in the guttering signal fire light with their faces bare, looking at their own hands as if counting something they had lost. Very quiet. It's working. It's actually Aldrich. It's working. Something releasing in his voice. Truth does not need permission to land. It only needs to be spoken where it cannot be unmade. Raven did not ask permission. He simply walked forward, as a man walks toward the thing he has been avoiding for 15 years, and put his palm flat against the cooling null iron. Low, barely audible, not meeting anyone's eyes, speaking into the relay. My name is Davin. I witnessed the court-martial of Sir Aldrich Vane in Ashkar. I said nothing when I should have spoken. Lysara's order to execute the boy came directly from Orin the Unwritten, not from the court's council, not from any sanctioned authority. I have known this for 15 years. I am saying it now. After a long silence, voice stripped to its foundation. By what remains of my oath, that is enough. That is more than enough, Davin. The null iron relay cooled in the time it takes a breath to escape a closed room. Outside, the northern signal fires guttered one by one. Not extinguished, but unmaintained, their keepers having set something down they could no longer remember why they were holding. 3 units. Northern flank, pulled the helms off without being told. Saw it through the slit there. Depends on what you're paying. But I'd say that counts as something. Okay, so, hear me out. Is 3 units of people remembering their people enough, or do we need a round number? Asking for the story, I'm planning to not die before I finish. Orin planned for the relay. For all of it. What Lysara brought into Ashkar, what walked beside her, it's called a Nullwright. A person was a person. Emptied of every memory they carried and refilled with Orin's erasure will, like a vessel poured out and filled with something cold. A mortal weapon with divine ammunition. How delightfully catastrophic. And I assume it is specifically calibrated to unmake anyone carrying active shard bonds. It doesn't need to aim, it just approaches, and what it once was comes apart in its presence. The shards go cold, the bonds go quiet, then whatever was holding the person together follows. By what remains of my oath, you are saying Orin built this from a living person. Deliberately. The gold scar at Mira's sternum did not pulse, it simply opened. Not the flesh, but the air around it, like a door someone had forgotten to close. And through that gap, Karath arrived. I am, I will have been. The one Orin emptied, I knew them. Before the word Nullwright existed, before even that cruelty had a name, they were a cartographer of sacred roads. They mapped the pilgrim routes. They mapped this road. Fracturing slightly at the edges, their name was Senna. Orin took their memory first, every mile they had ever walked, and used the shape of the absence to pour his will into. What approaches you now wears Senna's face. There is nothing of them left to save. I am telling you this so you do not hesitate trying. The joke not forming at all. Okay, yeah, okay. Measured, each word a weight placed carefully. The boy, at the court-martial. I refused Lysara's order and I lost the crest for it. I believed I had saved 1 life. Tell me what you saw that I did not. Voice low. There were 4. The boy's mother, his 2 sisters, and the boy himself. Lysara's order covered all 4. You only knew about the boy because that was all you were shown. The other 3, I was there for those. I didn't speak. I told myself it wasn't my refusal to make. Barely controlled, a breath between words. By what remains of my oath, you are telling me I saved 1 life and believed it was a victory. You saved the one you could see. That is more than I did with any of them. I have been a warden bound for 11 years, carrying that. I am telling you now, because you deserve to know the shape of what you refused. It was not small. The shards did not pulse or flare. They went cold, all 3 simultaneously, like lamps extinguished by a single breath. In 25 chapters of impossible things, not one of them had ever felt the shards go silent. Flat, no rhythm, no joke at all. It's at the door. Okay, so hear me out. We don't open it. We absolutely do not open it. Someone agree with me out loud right now. Very quiet, the sardonic edge entirely stripped. The relay housing just cracked from outside. Whatever Senni was, whatever Orin made with what was left, it does not require a door. The crack in the null iron spread another inch. The morning mist outside stilled completely, as if the air had been instructed to hold its breath. And then slowly, the iron-banded door began to open inward. Not forced, not broken, but patient, the way only things with no remaining self-interest can afford to be. The null iron housing cracked from the outside in, not with force but with absence, as if the metal simply forgot it was solid. The figure that stepped through the broken threshold moved the way erasure moves, without hesitation, without waste, without a self to slow it down. That is, that was the, they used her body after they used her body. Terror, a joke that dies in his throat. Okay, so hear me out. That is not, I am not going to finish that sentence. Shard bond at Mira's sternum went dark for the first time since it sealed. No warmth, no pulse, no golden thread back to Karath. Just a cold disk of scar tissue and the face of a dead woman walking toward her. Barely audible, all sardonic armor gone. She forgave him. She chose this herself, and Orin used her after. Flat, formal, a wall being built in real time. Step behind the relay. By what remains of my oath, I will not let it reach you. Nullwright raised one script-covered hand, and the air between them thinned, consonants and vowels being unwritten as they formed. Aldrich did not swing. He spoke instead, the only weapon he had left, that the thing in front of him might still understand. Controlled, formal, each word placed with the weight of a drawn blade. Area Voss, saint of the undying court. You have been waiting a very long time. You said so yourself. You do not have to wait for Orin's orders. Flat mechanical. The designation is incomplete. The designated vessel is concluded. Administrative completion is the assigned function. You forgave him. You said it yourself before Orin took you. That was real. That was yours. By what remains of my oath, I am asking you to remember that it was yours. Cale Dunmore had never been brave in any way he could explain afterward. He stepped forward because the joke was gone and the silence was wrong, and he was carrying a dead city's hymn in his bones, and it needed somewhere to go. Terrified and singing anyway, the words arriving in the drowned choir's celestial dialect, his own voice overlaid with 17 ghost harmonics from Velserath. Okay, so hear me out, and then the song begins instead of the punchline. The Nullwright stopped. The silver light in its eyes flickered twice, and something that had been buried under Orin's erasure will pushed upward through the fracture lines, spreading across the script like cracks in ice above running water. Area Voss spoke once, not through the Nullwright's voice, through the fracture that the hymn had opened, a gap between the erasure will and the soul it had been poured over. 3 words in her own cadence, unhurried, gentle, certain. Aria's voice rising through the fracture, warm and absolute beneath the mechanical shell. I remember choosing. The null iron relay, sealed with a sound like a breath held for centuries, finally released, locking Karath's broadcast permanently into the continent's memory, past any unwriting. The gold warmth in Mira's sternum reignited. Karath's voice arrived before and after simultaneously, as it always did. Resonant, overlapping, grief. She chose. She will have been remembered. I was, I am, I will have been, and so will she. Nullwright did not shatter. It unraveled, quietly, like a name being exhaled for the last time. What remained was only armor, and inside the armor, nothing. Okay, so, hear me out. I think that actually worked. I think she chose it. She did. Don't make it smaller by explaining it. Inscriptions in the tube. 3 copies. I'm taking 1 west, 1 goes in the March's cairn I've kept since the tomb days, 1 stays here in the stone. Depends on what you're paying, but he already paid me. Before you were born, apparently. You guarded a dead god's contingency for how long? Already turning away? Long enough to know the job was real. That's all a job needs to be. He walked west without looking back. None of them called after him. Karath had planned even this. The unremarkable man with the sealed document walking into morning fog. 12 helms, stacked in the road like an offering. The wardens who had warned them were simply gone. West, north, home, nowhere. The broadcast had reached them while they held the flanking line, and they had set down what they could no longer carry. That's okay. So, hear me out. That's the relay working. That's actual people just deciding. It will not hold everywhere. But it held here. She had not brought them. That was the first impossible thing. Lasara, blade of the undying court, standing alone on a road littered with her own soldiers' discarded helms, and no invocation rising to her lips. Flat, but something in it is load-bearing silence. The order to execute the civilian witnesses came from Orin's own mouth. Not the council, not the court's charter. I carried it because I was told it was the same thing. It was not the same thing. clip, formal, voice barely controlled. By what remains of my oath, I know what it costs to say that aloud. I am not certain you know yet. Long pause. The ceremonial weight is still there, but something beneath it has cracked. The court has already decided. I find, for the first time, that I do not know what the court is deciding. It came through all three of them at once. Not speech, not possession, not seizure, only warmth. The particular warmth of something that has been broken for a very long time and has just in the smallest possible way been allowed to rest. Overlapping resonant echo, very quiet, from everywhere and nowhere. I will have been, and for this moment that is enough. Dry, but the knife is put away for once. How delightfully sufficient, for once. Quiet, genuine, no joke. Yeah, the undying court's second company had dissolved in the night, not fled, not routed. Simply removed their helms and set them down in the road dust, orderly as men laying tools at the end of a long shift. Karath's truth had walked through them like light through glass, and the glass had not shattered. It had cleared. You destroyed nothing I built. I built it on a lie someone handed me and told me was doctrine. Controlled what Karath named in the throne room. What only I heard. The Pantheon didn't erase him for remembering too much. They erased him because he remembered the moment they chose to stop being gods and start being administrators. The exact moment they decided that mortal suffering was a filing error, not a failure. Okay, so hear me out. That's the single most catastrophic thing anyone has ever said on a public road at dawn. And I've said some things. Very quiet. How long have you carried that? Without the knife. This time. Since the throne room, I was waiting for a moment that wasn't burning. How delightfully catastrophic that this is it. He came through all three of them at once. Not possession, not seizure. Something else. As if the weight that had been distributed across three bodies had simply decided, for one moment, to stand up. Overlapping resonance, grief beneath the power. I was the record. I am the record. I will have been the record of every moment the gods chose to look away. This is not restoration. This is only what was always true, being allowed to remain. No ceremony, only the stripped sentence. I served an erasure I was told was justice. The court has already decided, but the court did not know what it had decided in our name. The echo receding, then be recorded as one who paused. That is not nothing. That is, in fact, the whole of what I was erased for noticing. She did not kneel. She did not weep. She set the pauldron down in the road dust as carefully as if it were something still worth handling gently, and then straightened and said nothing at all. Very quiet. By what remains of my oath, that is enough. That will be recorded as enough. Low, looking at the pauldron, not the woman. It's already in the relay. Every null iron node. She's already in it. What she did and what she chose this morning, both. 4 shards pulsed, once, twice, settling to a rhythm that was not urgent and not warning, simply present. The way a remembered thing rests quietly in the mind once you stop fighting it. I will step outside time to complete what was broken. I do not know what I will be when I return. I know I will return. I was, I am, I will have been. And the difference between those for once is not grief. Honest, no joke at all. Okay, so hear me out. If you come back different, we're still going to remember the version that begged a saint's forgiveness in a null stone chapel. That one is staying in the record. Dry, but the warmth showing through the crack. How delightfully catastrophic that the end of the world's worst theological crisis looks like this. 5 people on a road at breakfast time. I expected more fire. Karath had warned them. He had warned them in the only way an erased god can warn anyone, by saying it before and after the moment in which it would be true. I was, I am, I will have been. When I return, I will not be the voice you carried. I will be the record itself. Do not mourn the voice. The warmth in all 3 shard bonds flared once, bright enough that Mira pressed her fist to her sternum, Kale curled his left palm closed, and Aldrich's oath scar lit white through his sleeve. Then the silhouette stepped backward into the space between moments and was gone. With flat, stripped certainty, Orin the Unwritten named himself the architecture of the court's forgetting. Architecture requires walls to stand. The broadcast took the walls. He has been dissolving since the relay sealed. You are telling us the god who erased a god is unmade by being named. How delightfully catastrophic. Quietly, no verdict in it. I spent 2 centuries as his instrument. I did not know I was a wall. The court has already decided, but this time I do not know what the court decides, because the court was him. The release came all at once, not violent, but absolute. Like a breath held for an age finally let go. Mira's sternum scar unsealed, the fractal disc dimming to smooth skin. The shard token slipped from Kale's fused palm and lay in the road dust, inert. Okay, so, hear me out. I have been holding that thing in my hand for what feels like my entire life. It just left. Are we supposed to feel like we've lost something? By what remains of my oath, yes. That is precisely what we are supposed to feel. It means it was real. He did not arrive. He had always been arriving. And now the moment caught up with him. Karath, god of memory and continuity, stood on the pilgrim road and was whole. Resonant, complete, overlapping itself once gentle. I was erased. I am remembered. I will have been the record that survives. Every name that was taken, I speak them now. I speak them into every null iron node, every stone that remembers being touched. I speak Area Voss. I speak Vel Surath. I speak what the Pantheon refused to carry. Somewhere across a continent, soldiers paused in the middle of ordinary mornings, turned toward nothing in particular, and remembered things they had never been told. Quietly formal but unguarded. I swear no oath to any court or order. I swear, witnessed by this road and these 2 people, to act in the manner of one who remembers what forgetting costs. That is the whole of it. After a brief silence, dry, but the warmth underneath is audible for exactly 1 second. That is, Aldrich, the first oath I have ever wanted to witness. Don't make it strange. Grinning, rhythmic, clean. The first joke in 30 chapters that lands without cracking. Okay, so, hear me out. I think we just saved the world, and all I got was this extremely cool hand scar and a really long story. I am going to sing this for the rest of my life, and no one will believe a word of it.